Okay, today we get to talk about dreams. Dream, 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 dream. All I gotta do
But we
is
talked about dreams
dream.
yesterday, somebody would shout
Yeah,
in the
well,
comment
this
section.
is the big dream, the pair of dreams about 7 and 7. So,
Seven
chap
lucky, seven unlucky.
yeah, 7 nice, 7 horrible.
Mm.
Chapter 41. We've got Pharaoh dreaming. So, you want to start the prayer today?
Dear kind and gracious Heavenly Father, we thank Thee for this day. We thank Thee for the opportunity to come together, and we thank Thee for the opportunity to read more of Thy Word. Please bless us to have a good rest of our day, to stay warm and safe, and please bless us to be able to learn something new about the Scriptures that we are reading. In the name of Jesus Christ, amen.
I want to mention something here. When Joseph was with Potiphar's wife, he didn't just pause, he absolutely ran. And because he stayed good and pure, he is now ready to lead Egypt. So, Pharaoh dreams of the cattle and the ears of grain. Joseph interprets the dreams as 7 years of plenty and 7 years of famine. He proposes a grain storage program. Pharaoh makes him ruler of all Egypt. Joseph marries Asenath. Interesting. He gathers grain as the sand upon the seashore. Asenath bears Manasseh and Ephraim. Joseph sells grain to Egyptians and others during the famine. This is an interesting thing to note.
He sells it instead of handing it out.
Right. And nobody saved their own.
Oh. So aside from the Pharaoh, nobody stored anything.
Right.
Well,
That's why they all become
dependent.
indentured servants to the king.
Yeah. And that's also kind of why I want to be able to learn how to do stuff like
Yep,
that,
yep.
because the more you rely on somebody else, the
Yeah,
more you lose.
The more chance you have to be taken over.
Yep.
So go for it.
And it came to pass at the end of two full years, the Pharaoh dreamed, and he behold, he stood by the river.
And behold, there came up out of the river 7 well-favored kine and fat-fleshed, and they fed in a meadow. Do you know what kine are?
A cow.
Milk cows, typically.
And behold, 7 other kine came up after them out of the river, ill-favored and lean-fleshed, and stood by the other kine upon the brink of the river.
And the ill-favored and lean-fleshed kine did eat up the 7 well-favored and fat kine. So Pharaoh awoke.
Calm down, lamp.
Yeah, I think we can just turn it back off. It sucks. We need to replace it or something.
At least we still got one light.
Yeah, we've got ones. I could probably bring over some other light, but...
And he slept and dreamed the second time, and behold, 7 ears of corn came up upon one stalk, rank and good.
And behold, 7 thin ears, and blasted with the east wind, sprang up after them.
Personally, I think the drawing versions that were in one of the the short animated tape from Nest,
Yeah.
Living Scriptures, they did an animation of
Yeah,
that very well.
They made it spooky.
They made it spooky, but it showed exactly what it was.
Yeah.
The Joseph in the Coat of Many Colors by DreamWorks is odd, and it's hard to understand what's going on.
Oh, okay.
And the 7 thin ears devoured the 7 rank and full ears, and Pharaoh awoke, and behold, it was a dream.
And it came to pass in the morning that his spirit was troubled. Yeah, I imagine so. Nightmares. And he sent and called for all the magicians of Egypt. What were you going to say?
If it looked like the creepy version of the first thing I mentioned, then yeah, I would jump awake too.
Yeah. And all the wise men thereof. And Pharaoh told them his dream, but there was none that could interpret them unto Pharaoh.
Then spake the chief butler unto Pharaoh, saying, I do remember my faults this day.
Pharaoh was wroth with his servants, and put me in ward in the captain of the guard's house, both me and the chief baker.
And we dreamed a dream in one night, and I and he, we dreamed each man according to the interpretation of his dream.
And there was with us a young man, in Hebrew, servant to the captain of the guard. So that couldn't have been Pharaoh then, or Potiphar. And we told him, and he interpreted to us our dreams. To each man according to his dream he did interpret.
And it came to pass as he interpreted to us, so it was. Me, he...
You restored.
Yeah, that's weirdly worded.
Yeah.
Me
that
you
one.
restored unto mine office, and him he hanged. The baker you hanged.
Right. Pronouns.
Very
Oh, well.
weird pronouns with that one.
Yeah, that was an odd one. And then Pharaoh sent and called Joseph, and they brought him hastily out of the dungeon, and he shaved himself and changed his raiment and came in unto Pharaoh.
Gotta look presentable before the king.
Yeah, but also this was done fast. This was, hey, dude, we need you up here right now.
And Pharaoh said unto Joseph, I have dreamed a dream, and there is none that can interpret it. And I have heard say of thee that thou canst understand a dream to interpret it.
And Joseph answered Pharaoh, saying, It is not in me. God shall give Pharaoh an answer of peace.
And Pharaoh said unto Joseph, In my dream, behold, I stood upon the bank of a river. Of the river. Probably the Nile.
Yeah. And behold, there came up out of the river 7 kine, fat-fleshed and well-favored, and they fed in a meadow.
And behold, 7 other kine came up after them, poor and very ill-favored and lean-fleshed, such as I had never saw in all the land of Egypt for badness.
And the lean and the ill-favored kind did eat up the first 7 fat kine.
And when they had
I wonder how they portrayed that. That could also be nightmare fuel, depending on what they did.
how it was eaten, yeah.
Yeah.
And when they had eaten them up, it could not have been known that they had eaten them, but they were still ill-favored, as at the beginning, so I awoke.
And I saw in my dream, and behold, 7 ears came up in one stalk, full and good.
Corn.
Yep.
And behold, 7 ears withered and thin, and blasted with the east wind sprung up after them.
Actually, I think that corn was a North American thing. So
Then it was probably wheat.
yeah, wheat or barley, just some kind of grain. It doesn't really matter which one it was. And behold, 7 ears went over the... Yeah, you read that.
24.
And the thin ears devoured the 7 good ears, and I told this unto the magicians, but there was none that could declare it unto me.
And Joseph said unto Pharaoh, The dream of Pharaoh is one. God hath showed Pharaoh what he is about to do.
The 7 good kine are 7 years, and the 7 good ears are 7 years. The dream is one.
And the 7 thin and ill-favored kind that came up after them are 7 years, and the 7 empty ears blasted with the east wind shall be 7 years of famine.
This is the thing which I have spoken unto Pharaoh. What God is about to do, he showeth unto Pharaoh.
Behold, there come 7 years of great plenty throughout all the land of Egypt.
And there shall arise after them 7 years of famine, and all the plenty shall be forgotten in the land of Egypt, and the famine shall consume the land.
And the plenty shall not be known in the land by reason of that famine following, for it shall be very grievous.
And for that the dream was doubled unto Pharaoh twice. It is because the thing is established by God, and God will shortly bring it to pass.
Now
How often does God repeat himself?
If it's something very important, he does it often.
But as a general rule, you get one chance.
Yeah, like Moses.
99% of the time or so, God doesn't say anything more than once. And here he said it twice because he wanted to make sure he drove home the point.
Now therefore let Pharaoh look out a man discreet and wise, and set him over the land of Egypt.
This is the one thing that I don't like in the Technicolor Dreamcoat. He starts going, and it's like, no, Joseph wasn't like that. Joseph was king, find somebody good.
Yeah,
and,
in the Living Scriptures version, it's the Pharaoh who comes up with, no man is wiser than you. You would have a Hebrew be over it, and then in the Coat of Many Colors from DreamWorks, he explains it, and Pharaoh looks over to, at that point, it was Potiphar, because he had reconciled with Joseph, and said, do you trust this man with my life? And Pharaoh's like, you. What?
Yeah. And you can read it here. Pharaoh finds somebody discreet and wise, someone that can do a good job, and I'll let you choose, And in the Technicolor Dreamcoat, it's, hey, me, I'm wise, I'm smart, and it's like, no, that's not how it goes.
No.
Yeah, but
somebody
yes.
who's humble would not do that.
Right, and that's what we see here. This is a statement of, I'm not the guy, but if you can find someone who is good, go for it. And then 34.
Let Pharaoh do this, and let him appoint officers over the land, and take up the 5th part of the land of Egypt in the 7 plenteous plenteous years. However you pronounce that.
Plenteous, yeah. And let them gather all the food of those good years that come, and lay up corn under the hand of Pharaoh, and let them keep food in the cities. Now, the interesting part of this is, let's do this as a government thing. And the people go, well, hey, the government's going to take care of us, so we don't need to worry about it. You need to have your own personal food storage and supply.
Yeah, it's kind of why I hated the handing out of free cash during COVID, because we're going to be paying that back
for a long time.
Generations.
Well,
maybe not generations, but my point still
a long
stands.
time, yeah.
And that food shall be for store to the land against the 7 years of famine, which shall be in the land of Egypt, that the land perish not through the famine.
And the thing was good in the eyes of Pharaoh, and in the eyes of all his servants.
And Pharaoh said unto his servants, Can we find such a one as this is, a man in whom the Spirit of God is?
Well, that was interesting. He's saying specifically a person who is inspired by God. And Pharaoh said unto Joseph, Forasmuch as God hath showed thee all this, there is none so discreet and wise as thou art.
Thou shalt be over my house, and according unto thy word shall all my people be ruled. Only in the throne will I be greater than thou.
Dang.
Second in command.
That's quite a promotion. Oh, you were in jail? Let's put you in front of the whole king. Yeah, it's like, what? And Pharaoh said unto Joseph, See, I have set thee over all the land of Egypt.
And Pharaoh took off his ring from his hand, and put it upon Joseph's hand, and arrayed him in vestures of fine linen, and put a gold chain about his neck.
Wow. And he made him to ride in the second chariot which he had, and they cried before him, Bow the knee, and they made him ruler over all the land of Egypt.
And Pharaoh said unto Joseph, I am Pharaoh, and without thee shall no man lift up his head or foot in all the land of Egypt.
Wow.
Wow.
Yeah, just major promotion.
Mm-hmm.
That's like me suddenly becoming president of the United States for just having woken up in the morning. You know?
That would be insane.
And Pharaoh called Joseph's name
Zaphnath-Paneah.
Zaphnath-Paneah.
Something like that.
Paneah, something like that, yeah. And he gave him to wife Asenath, the daughter of Potiphera, priest of On. Huh. Potiphera. So what does Potiphar mean? That's an interesting note. Okay.
Finish the...
Yeah, priest of On. And Joseph went out over all the land of Egypt.
And Joseph was 30 years old when he stood before Pharaoh, king of Egypt. And Joseph went out from the presence of Pharaoh and went throughout all the land of Egypt.
And the 7 plenteous years, and in the 7 plenteous years, the earth brought forth by handfuls.
And he gathered up all the food of the 7 years which were in the land of Egypt, and laid up the food in the cities, the food of the field, which was round about every city, laid he up in the same.
And Joseph gathered corn as the sand of the sea, very much, until he left numbering, for it was without number.
And unto Joseph... I accidentally highlighted something.
Just tap away from it.
Okay.
50.
Okay. And unto Joseph were born 2 sons before the years of famine came, which Asenath, the daughter of Potiphera, priest of On, bare unto him.
Potiphar. Anyhow, and Joseph called the name of the firstborn Manasseh.
Oh, these guys.
Yep. And they are very important. For God, said he, hath made me forget all my toil and all my father's house.
And Manasseh means...
It's just a link to several
Darn.
footnotes.
And the name of the second son he called Ephraim, for God hath caused me to be fruitful in the land of my affliction.
Again, just footnotes.
Darn.
And the 7 years of plenteousness that was in the land of Egypt were ended. And you also have to note that this was plenteous across a fairly large area, because he didn't just affect Egypt if his family came
Yeah.
So this
Famine's
is
pretty widespread.
the 7 years of plenty were huge everywhere, and then there's 7 years of famine. So
And the 7 years of dearth began to come, according as Joseph had said, and the dearth was
Drought and
in
famine.
all the lands. But in all the land of Egypt there was bread.
And when all the land of Egypt was famished, the people cried to Pharaoh for bread. And Pharaoh said unto all the Egyptians, Go unto Joseph, what he saith to you do.
And the famine was over all the face of the earth, and Joseph opened all the storehouses and sold unto the Egyptians, and the famine waxed sore in the land of Egypt.
And all the countries came into Egypt to Joseph for to buy corn, because that the famine was so sore in all lands.
Very
So,
widespread.
this is not just Joseph is getting money from all of the Egyptians and turning them into indentured servants. This is making Egypt one of the wealthiest nations in
At that time,
a
basically,
very
the world.
large section of the world. I'm not going to say all the world, but a very large section of the world, simply because they had so much grain and so much food that everybody came and bought from them. And so, we got Solomon later having, hundreds of thousands of talents and money and all this other stuff come in. These guys had every nation just dumping money into them for 7 years. So Egypt became mega ultra powerful, mega ultra rich.
It would have been similar to Scrooge McDuck in that regard. I'm
Yeah.
bathing in gold.
Yeah, literally. And so 400 years later, they still had a great amount of this gold and all that, and the Israelites walked out with it.
Huh.
Yeah,
Really?
pretty much.
I know they took their own flocks, but I didn't realize they did that.
Yeah, we'll have to go into that. It's a really neat story for how that turns out. We got 50 chapters in Genesis. I was thinking it was 40, but it was not. Okay, so Joseph sets up a food storage program for all of Egypt, and the Egyptians may have kept some for themselves, but they obviously didn't keep enough. And by the end of the second or third year, they were starting to come to Joseph and buy, and all of the nations round about were starting to come to Egypt to buy. And so Joseph was in an incredibly powerful position, not just because of being in charge of all of Egypt, but because of the fact that he could tell any nation around them, no, go die, if he wanted to.
Yep. Mm-hmm. A good example of why you should always have some form of food storage.
Yeah, especially 72-hour kits, because
Oh, yeah.
we saw that with good grief when Helene came through here.
The hurricane, COVID.
Well,
but
just
more the hurricane than
Yeah.
COVID, but nonetheless.
it took 72 hours to get. I mean, even with all the helicopters that came in, it took 72 hours to get just some very basic stuff in place. And so having
and power.
Well, food and water
That too.
were non-existent for many people.
Yeah, and at my workplace, we were basically bought out within a
Yeah.
good amount, a very short period of time.
Most stores do not stock for more than 24 to 48 hours because they just can't keep that much on the shelf.
And it's going bad, etc.
Yeah, that too. But, even canned goods. Canned goods are long-term shelf life, but, if you have everybody come in and buy
all at
out,
once.
there's no way. And if you don't have a way to resupply because there's no transportation,
You're kind of screwed.
yeah. So this is an example of being
Admittedly,
prepared.
one thing that did happen to many people, they were somewhat prepared and they had freezers with meat.
Right.
But as soon as the power went out, they lost
They started losing, right. They
pretty
had
much all that meat.
They had to start cooking and all that.
And
which-
even if they did cook, which I know a few
Yeah.
people who did, they cooked a lot and shared it, but
Right.
they still had to trash a whole bunch.
Yeah. we were very, very, very lucky to have not lost power in this
Same with my
house.
workplace. That was like the
Yeah.
like everywhere else lost power except for my worst workplace in that zone. It was weird.
Oh well. Anyhow, tomorrow we get to talk about the reunion starting and
Yay! Oh dear.
all of the above, and how Joseph forgave, but was careful. And I really appreciate how he didn't just say, "Great, let's come in." He said, "Let me find out." And
That is a very realistic way of how you should go about forgiving people.
yeah, forgiving does not mean forgetting. Forgiving means not holding on to the anger and hatred. And this is an excellent example of how to do that and how to have it work out for the best. And
Be careful the kind of test you do.
well, yeah, this is he's kind of got all the cards in his hand, but it's a really neat thing. So we will deal with that tomorrow. So we'll see you then. Bye.
Bye.